So I kind of wanted to gauge whether you wanted to talk about it on the show or kind of let it play out and finish. But so like the main thing that I've watched that's new this week is obviously Better Call Saul, which is back. The last 2 weeks of episodes have just been genuinely like some of the best television I've ever watched in my life, and almost like the 2 episodes back to back have been just 2 completely different genres. Like last week is one of the greatest sort of thrillers I think I've ever seen. Like it honestly, if you added 20 minutes to that episode, you could just release that as a thriller movie. Like the tension that they build up is insanely great. And then the episode this week, which is just, you know, it's sort of like the deconstruction of a relationship, I guess, through like some of the most heart-wrenching circumstances you've ever seen. And I've said it before, but if Ray Seahorn goes the length of this show, the run of this show, without winning like an Emmy or a Golden Globe or something, it's one of the genuinely biggest travesties in the history of television, because she was so fucking good in this episode that I was almost in tears just watching her explaining the situation to Jimmy. And I don't want to give too many spoilers out to people. You just have to kind of go back and watch it, and I would recommend that everyone watches Better Call Saul. But yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to go too deep into talking about it, or whether we just wait until it ends. But
yeah, in terms of like actually talking about it in significant detail, I think we'll wait till it plays out. But I think it's kind of, I put it on the heath, one, because it's one of the only things I watched this week, and two, because I think it's like our last plea that if you haven't been watching it till now, because I totally get people's point of view that they don't want to, because like I know I talked to you about it before, Jack, and I think I mentioned it on the show that like for a while it was too soon after Breaking Bad to start. And there are moments in the first season where it's like, oh, they're just doing, hey, remember this from Breaking Bad, and it feels like you haven't earned this yet, show. But it very quickly becomes its own thing, and it is just an immaculate piece of television that is, I'm not saying it is better than Breaking Bad, but I'm willing to hear people who want to argue it's on the same level. I think that it's, so Breaking Bad, I think maybe has more compelling a story, right? They do a lot more. There's just a lot more stuff that happens. I know that probably, again, I'm trying not to give too many spoilers here, but from a writing and an acting perspective, I think Gilligan and Gould have just taken a step above where they were on Breaking Bad, and some of the direction as well, like the way that episode was directed, that first episode back. And just the way that it was following the fates of the 2 characters, and some of the camera work and the shot composition. It's honestly the sort of thing that if somebody was like a budding director or just really interested in kind of making movies or TV or whatever, if they watch this show, it just feels like a toolkit of all the right things to do. And with this week's episode, there was a thing I saw tweeted after it came out that really stuck with me, and it was, something people have been talking about for the whole run. Is, one of the themes of the show is the complete eradication of the self. So how, the Breaking Bad thing was like, turning Mr. Chips into Scarface, but this is like, the interesting wrinkle about this has been, we know the end point of like the kind of person that Saul Goodman is in Breaking Bad. So how do you get this genuinely like sympathetic character, Jimmy McGill, and take him all the way to being the Saul Goodman we remember from Breaking Bad? I was like, how are they going to do that? And people were talking about like, there's not many episodes left, and he's still like, reasonably likable and sympathetic in some ways. And there was a tweet this week talking about that episode where they're like, we have wondered for so long how they were going to show like how how are you going to depict the transition between Jimmy and Saul as personalities, and they were like, motherfuckers did it in one camera cut. One camera cut.
But I think the whole thing has just been a steady build to that. And one of the things that I liked about it is that you mentioned the Mr. Chips to Scarface thing for Walt. Like Walt is an incredibly sympathetic character from moment one, and then he just gradually unravels all of that good faith and like work that he's built up. The thing I liked about Jimmy is that from moment one of the show, he was likable, but he also had really obvious character flaws. And for me, like in early seasons, Jimmy McGill is an incredibly frustrating person to watch, because you're like, oh, okay, look, you are smart, you are intelligent, like you clearly have passions, but at the same time you can't get out of your own way. And his brother's completely cynical view of how he could never get out of his own way was kind of like, it was harsher than the audience, but it was like you could understand both of their points, and having had an entire lifetime together, you got broadly what they were going for with their relationship. But you could see the good and the bad in Jimmy from the start, whereas with Walt, like if you showed someone the first episode and then showed them like the last episode, it would be massively jarring. But to me, you watch that first episode of Jimmy McGill and you're like, I can see that there'd be a few terrible things that happens to this guy and he becomes a complete shyster. But yeah, it's just such a great show, and it makes me so sad that it's going to be over soon, and just what I don't know what they're going to do next. But I mean, somebody needs to just give them all of the money and all of the creative freedoms, because Gilligan and Gould are just an absolute powerhouse duo of television writing.